Let's do English royalty speedrun. And this time we're going to start with the Wars of the Roses, the inspiration for Game of Thrones. This war had two families, the Lancasters and the Yorks. And we'll start with Henry VI, who got to the throne as a little baby. He had mental health problems and would go into these catatonic states, and he married Margaret of Anjou, who was known as the She-Wolf of France. The guy playing Ned Stark in this story would be Richard, Duke of York, who was at one point a Lord Protector for this king, but led a rebellion after the Queen kept removing him and ultimately lost his head. Eventually, Henry VI was deposed by Edward of York, who became Edward IV. So this is kind of like Robb Stark in this story. But he didn't do it alone. He had his right-hand man, Richard Neville, who was known as the Kingmaker. And so when Edward's on the throne, the Kingmaker was like, hey, I got you a great French princess as a bride. And then Edward was like, actually, I married someone in secret and she's on the other side of the war. That woman would be Elizabeth Woodville, who was kind of like Robb Stark's wife in the series, and she had already been married and lost her husband. She was on the Lancaster side originally, but of course became part of the York family. So the Kingmaker was pretty pissed, and he ended up rebelling with Edward's brother George, Duke of Clarence, and the previous king, who's still alive, and his wife. So they lead a rebellion. Eventually, they get defeated again, and the Kingmaker also dies. Things are good for a while until Edward IV suddenly dies. He has two young boys. The oldest is Edward, and he is now the king. Elizabeth Woodville, the previous queen, is real nervous, and she goes into sanctuary at Westminster Abbey. Meanwhile, the new boy king's uncle, Richard, is like, hey, I'm going to take you to the Tower of London. Why don't you bring your little brother along and you'll stay safe. These are the princes in the tower, and spoiler alert, they go missing. Then their uncle Richard says, actually, their parents' marriage was never valid because it was a secret. Therefore, they were never in line for the throne anyway. So I am now the king. This is King Richard III. You're probably wondering, where is Daenerys in this story? And I will tell you. Over in France, and also she's a boy. So he is Henry Tudor, the son of Margaret Beaufort. Margaret Beaufort was part of a legitimized line of the royal family. It's a long story. Anyway, so Margaret Beaufort was a really rich woman. She was really devoted to getting her son on the throne. So she pairs up with Elizabeth Woodville, and Henry Tudor invades, defeats Richard III, and Henry Tudor is now the new king of England. That is Henry VII, and he ends up marrying Elizabeth Woodville's oldest daughter, Elizabeth of York. And that is how the Lancasters and the York joined together and formed the Tudor Rose.